The night had a bite that seemed to gnaw at every inch of skin exposed to the frozen air. Each breath escaped in thick clouds, visible reminders of life in the cruel cold. The streets were empty, silent except for the crunch of snow beneath my boots. My heart, however, was louder than the winter wind, thudding with a mixture of fear, curiosity, and an unexplainable pull toward something, or someone, waiting in the shadows. Ahead, by the side of the icy road, a figure shivered beneath the dim glow of a flickering street lamp. An old man, hunched, frail, wrapped in tatters of a coat that had seen decades of harsh winters, seemed almost swallowed by the snowdrifts around him. And yet, there was something impossible in his presence. The way his eyes glimmered in the lamplight, sharp and commanding despite the apparent weakness, sent a chill deeper than the cold ever could. It was as if the night itself had paused to witness him. Every instinct screamed to keep walking, to ignore this solitary figure, but a quiet, insistent tug, like a thread pulling me forward, refused to let me turn away. My footsteps slowed, crunching softly in the snow as I drew closer, my breath shaky and uneven. The closer I came, the more I felt that the man wasn't just an old, shivering stranger. There was a weight in the way he carried himself, a calm authority wrapped in vulnerability that made my stomach twist with anticipation. He looked up, and our eyes met. It was a gaze that pierced through layers of time, loneliness, and stories untold. For a fleeting moment, the world around us, the street, the snow, the distant sound of a barking dog, faded to silence. I saw not just an old man, but a lifetime reflected in those eyes, victories, regrets, wisdom, secrets. My chest tightened, and the cold became irrelevant. I knew instinctively that this encounter tonight would leave a mark on my life I could never erase. I hesitated, hands tucked into the pockets of my warm coat, mind racing. What compelled me to step closer? A mix of empathy, curiosity, and something unnameable, a sense of destiny perhaps, pushed me forward. Every step brought a sharper awareness of his features, the deep lines etched into his face by years of hardship, the tremor in his hands that betrayed age, yet hinted at resilience, and the faint glint of rings on his fingers that caught the lamplight like secret stars. Snowflakes swirled around him, some landing on his shoulders and melting into his tattered coat, yet he did not flinch. His calm, patient presence held the chaos of the cold at bay, commanding the scene in a way that felt both natural and impossible. I reached him, heart hammering, and without thinking, I removed my own thick wool coat and held it out. "Here, you need this more than I do," I whispered, voice trembling from cold and nerves alike. He didn't move immediately, his eyes studying me, weighing, calculating. Time stretched taut between us, each second thick with unspoken tension. Then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, he reached out. His fingers brushed mine, sending a shiver not from the cold, but from recognition, from the electricity of fate touching reality. As he wrapped the coat around his shoulders, I noticed the faintest flicker of a smile, or was it amusement, in his eyes. He exhaled, a sound mingling relief and something else, something unspoken that made my pulse race. This wasn't just a man accepting warmth. This was a moment alive with possibilities, secrets, and threads of destiny I could not yet see. The streetlight flickered again, casting dancing shadows that stretched across his form, revealing glimpses of strength hidden beneath age, dignity beneath frailty. He lifted his gaze to me once more, eyes piercing, and for a heartbeat, the cold lost all meaning. There was knowledge in that look, silent and profound, as if he knew the invisible consequences of this simple act of kindness. I wanted to ask questions, to uncover the story behind those eyes, but my words stuck in my throat. I was too small in that moment, too human, confronted by a presence that transcended ordinary life. Every muscle in me tensed as I realized. This was no ordinary encounter. The way he held himself, the quiet weight of authority beneath fragility, the calm patience, it all hinted at a life far larger than the streets, the snow, or even the city itself. I felt my heart thudding, my hands trembling, yet I could not look away. A magnetic pull kept me rooted, bound to the man before me, to the unknown story that hovered on the edge of revelation. The wind gusted sharply, sending a swirl of snow between us. I felt it against my face, against my heart, as though the universe itself had drawn a curtain to spotlight this meeting. I realized, in the deepest part of me, that what I had believed about the world, about fate, about kindness, everything, was about to be rewritten. And the first quiet step had been taken. The coat, the gesture, the choice to reach out. He looked at me with eyes that carried the weight of hidden kingdoms, unspoken power, and stories untold. My simple act of warmth had unlocked a thread leading into a life I could not yet fathom. That glance, that moment, held secrets that would unravel my understanding of reality, fortune, and destiny itself. The old man shifted slightly, and I sensed it. The night had just begun to reveal its truths, and I had unknowingly stepped into a story far larger than myself, a story that would change everything. I had thought the cold was the enemy that night, the biting wind and frozen streets that tested every ounce of courage in me. Yet, standing before the old man, coat in hand, I realized that warmth was not just physical. It was a bridge, a key, a gesture that might unlock truths I had never dared imagine. The smallest act, offering my coat, felt monumental, heavy with possibilities I could not yet comprehend. The flickering streetlight danced across his face as I held it out, and in that instant, I understood. One gesture could unravel destinies. I stepped closer, every crunch of snow beneath my boots amplified by the silence of the night. The man's eyes, those impossibly deep eyes, watched me with a patient intensity. I draped the thick wool coat over his frail shoulders. It was far too big for him, engulfing his body in warmth, yet somehow it seemed to fit perfectly into the rhythm of the night. His fingers brushed the fabric, and I noticed the tremor, not from weakness alone, but perhaps from something hidden beneath a lifetime of restraint and discipline. He looked up, and a faint, enigmatic smile curved across his lips. "Thank you. Sometimes kindness finds the worthy," he said, his voice soft yet resonant, carrying a weight that seemed to stretch across the frozen air. It wasn't arrogance, not at all. It was quiet wisdom, a presence that demanded respect without demanding attention. Every syllable felt layered, a message wrapped in the simplicity of gratitude. My chest tightened as I realized the man's words were not merely polite. They were a subtle acknowledgement that my act of generosity had significance beyond the moment. I studied him more closely. The dim streetlight revealed a series of unusual rings on his fingers, delicate yet intricate, glinting like artifacts of another world. There was a subtle curve to his posture, a strength even beneath frailty, an aura that whispered authority. Every detail, the careful way he adjusted the coat, the tilt of his head, the calmness in his eyes, hinted at a story far larger than the icy street or the night itself. The contrast between his appearance and his aura was staggering, frail yet commanding, vulnerable yet powerful, ordinary yet extraordinary. I felt my pulse quicken. How could one man carry such contradictions so effortlessly? I searched for answers in the lines of his face, the slight quiver in his hands, the quiet, almost imperceptible movements that betrayed a life of discipline and authority. The snow swirled around us, caught in the streetlight, as if the universe had decided to frame this moment in frozen brilliance. It wasn't just snow, it was a curtain, separating the ordinary world behind me from the extraordinary presence before me. Our conversation, though brief, carried weight. "Are you all right?" I asked, voice trembling slightly as I tried to mask both the cold and the sudden rush of awareness that he was no ordinary man. He nodded slowly, eyes fixed on mine. "I am, as all men should be," he said, his tone deceptively simple. "Yet in your gesture I see more than warmth. I see intent, courage, and the willingness to act without knowing the outcome. That is rare." I swallowed hard, feeling a surge of emotion I could not contain. I wanted to ask more, to uncover the story hidden behind those enigmatic eyes. But my words faltered. Every instinct warned me that this was only the beginning, that the night held secrets that would not be revealed easily. Yet something, an invisible tether, drew me closer, urging me to stay, to watch, to witness. The coat shifted slightly on his shoulders, and I noticed subtle details that I had missed before. The careful way he adjusted it, the elegance in his fingers despite the signs of age, the faint glimmer of authority that seemed to radiate naturally, without effort. It was as if the coat was not merely a piece of clothing, but a symbol, a conduit, a bridge connecting my small act to something far greater than either of us could yet see. Time stretched thin around us. The cold, the snow, the flickering streetlight, all faded into insignificance compared to the energy radiating from the man before me. I could sense the layers of history embedded in him, victories and losses, secrets and power, wisdom accumulated over decades. And yet, he had chosen to stand here, shivering beneath a broken street lamp, allowing me, a stranger, to offer warmth, and in doing so, unknowingly set the stage for revelations that would shake my understanding of life itself. I wanted to ask, "Who are you? What story lies behind those eyes?" But the moment felt sacred, suspended in a fragile balance between curiosity, fear, and awe. I realized that some truths cannot be forced. They must be discovered. And tonight, I was being given the first piece of a puzzle I had no idea existed. Snowflakes settled on his shoulders, melting into the folds of the coat. I shivered, not from the cold, but from the realization that every choice I had made, the steps that led me through icy streets, the decision to stop, the courage to extend my coat, had brought me to this encounter. The night seemed to acknowledge it, a silent witness to the unfolding drama, the invisible audience holding its breath alongside me. And then, the first real sign of something extraordinary, a subtle gesture, almost imperceptible. He straightened slightly, shoulders back, eyes lifting not in recognition of me, but in recognition of the moment itself. The way he carried himself shifted imperceptibly, authority seeping through the frail exterior. It was a hint, a seed of revelation planted carefully, that there was far more to this man than met the eye. My breath caught. I stepped back slightly, heart hammering, as he fixed me with a gaze that seemed to pierce time itself. The rings glimmered again, catching the light like secret beacons. The air trembled, not from the cold, but from the invisible gravity of the truth he carried. And in that heartbeat, I knew. This was no ordinary stranger. My coat, my act of kindness, it had unlocked a thread leading into a life, a power, and a secret so extraordinary that nothing I thought I knew about the world would ever remain the same. I had thought I understood the night, its quiet, its cold, the rhythm of snow crunching beneath my boots. But standing beside the old man, I realized the world had shifted. Something about him demanded attention, though no one else was around. An invisible authority cloaked in frailty, a power that silenced the bustling city streets, even as they lay hidden beneath layers of frost. Every breath I took seemed to echo against his calm presence, my pulse tethered to the rhythm of his subtle movements. I couldn't look away, nor could I approach carelessly. The old man shifted slightly, adjusting the coat I had draped over his shoulders. He moved with deliberate grace, each motion fluid, precise, like a dancer or a commander well versed in the art of patience. My eyes traced the lines of his face, the faint wrinkles of age, the depth in his gaze, the almost imperceptible way his shoulders carried the weight of experiences far heavier than the snow around us. It was impossible to reconcile the frailty of his body with the command he radiated, a presence that seemed to bend the cold itself into silence. I stepped closer, cautious, yet drawn to him as though by some invisible thread. I noticed how his hands, though slightly veined and tremulous, held themselves with dignity, the fingers curling ever so slightly, as if prepared to act with precision at any moment. Even in stillness, he radiated control, an aura that suggested years spent mastering not just craft, but life itself. Each small gesture, shifting a foot, adjusting a coat, tilting his head, was deliberate, measured, speaking of an understanding of the world I had only glimpsed in books and legends. The night seemed to bend around him. The snow fell softly, yet each flake seemed to pause in his presence, as if time itself had slowed to accommodate his gravity. I felt it keenly, the hushed whispers of the wind, the subtle creak of frost-laden branches, even the faint murmur of distant traffic. Everything fell into rhythm with his stillness. I realized then that this man was no ordinary wanderer. He carried a history, an authority, an unspoken power that demanded recognition even from shadows. His eyes met mine briefly, dark and fathomless, yet flickering with something I couldn't name. Respect, awareness, a silent test? I couldn't tell, but the intensity of that glance rooted me to the spot. I noticed the smallest details, a faint scar near his temple, the delicate rings on his fingers that glimmered subtly, the disciplined way his coat hung perfectly despite the chill. Every element whispered of a life lived in command, hidden from the world, waiting for someone to notice. And now, by a frozen street in the heart of the night, I was that someone. The old man shifted again, this time turning his gaze slightly toward the horizon. My pulse quickened. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but there was a meaning in that glance. Expectation, recognition, awareness of something unseen approaching. I strained to see what he saw. The empty streets stretched before us, dimly lit by flickering lamplights. But nothing moved. Nothing yet. But his eyes spoke of arrivals beyond my comprehension. The suspense pressed against my chest like ice, sharp and thrilling, and I realized that I was standing at the threshold of something far greater than a cold night, or a simple act of kindness. I wanted to ask, "Who are you? What do you see?" But the words died on my lips. There was reverence in this moment, a sense that speaking would shatter the delicate balance that had formed between us. I took a shallow breath, feeling the cold bite at my cheeks, yet my body felt warm, almost electrified, in his presence. The man exuded a gravity that seemed to draw the world toward him, a subtle aura of authority, intelligence, and hidden stories. Each tiny motion, the tilt of his head, the flicker of his eyelids, the almost imperceptible sway of his body, was a wordless command, a language I was only beginning to decode. I watched him with growing awareness. The way he surveyed the empty street, the calculated patience in his stance, the slight narrowing of his eyes as if gauging invisible threats, all hinted at a life of vigilance, a life of responsibility that transcended mere survival. And yet, there was calm in him, a serenity that defied the harsh cold and the harsh unknown. He was a paradox, frail yet formidable, ordinary in appearance yet extraordinary in essence. Snowflakes clung to his coat and hair, yet he seemed untouched by their weight, his presence bending the elements subtly around him. I noticed how the light caught the small, polished rings on his fingers, glinting like beacons, signaling significance, legacy, or power. Every detail, every nuance, screamed of an identity hidden in plain sight, waiting for revelation. The streets, empty and silent, felt like a stage, the frozen night, a witness. I realized that nothing about him was accidental. He was deliberate in every breath, every glance, every pause. I stepped slightly closer, drawn by curiosity, fear, and an unspoken promise. Each step I took seemed to echo unnaturally in the stillness, a drumbeat marking my journey toward discovery. My heart raced. I could sense the tension in the air as though the night itself anticipated revelation. He had not moved toward me, yet I felt the pull of proximity, the invisible thread connecting us. Something about this man was ancient, layered, a force veiled in humility, waiting for the moment to be seen, to be understood. Then, almost imperceptibly, he shifted his weight again, tilting his head toward the horizon with a measured glance. I could sense it, a signal, subtle yet powerful, that something, or someone, was arriving. My mind raced, imagining possibilities, a hidden guard, an unseen companion, a figure of authority drawn to his presence. My pulse thundered in my ears. The cold faded from my awareness. Suspense wrapped around me, thick and urgent. Every instinct in me screamed that this night was no longer just about a chance encounter. It was a threshold, a pivot point in my life. The act of kindness with the coat had set a chain of events into motion. And now, standing in the frozen streets, I realized that the old man was not merely a stranger. It was as if the world itself had chosen this moment to reveal a secret, and I was the first witness. The old man's gaze remained fixed on the distance, unblinking, patient, and unreadable. I strained to see, but the street was empty, the snow still falling. My chest tightened with anticipation. Someone or something was coming. I realized in that heartbeat that this man was not who he appeared to be. The world, I sensed, was about to shift, and standing beside him, I would witness the first ripple of a truth far greater than I had ever imagined. Every ordinary detail seemed extraordinary tonight, and I couldn't shake the feeling that destiny was nudging me closer to revelation. The snow under my boots no longer felt cold. It carried weight, like the footprints of fate pressing into the frozen streets. Every shadow, every flicker of lamplight seemed charged with meaning. The old man, still standing with quiet authority in the midst of the frozen silence, was no longer just a stranger. There was something about him, subtle yet undeniable, that made the air around us tremble, as if the world itself recognized the significance of this night. My curiosity surged, but fear clung tightly, a counterweight to every step I took. I followed him from a discreet distance, careful not to break the invisible tether that seemed to bind us. Townspeople whispered as he passed, voices low and reverent, eyes filled with a strange mix of awe and fear. Mothers drew children closer, merchants bowed their heads, and even the guards in the distance, whose ceremonial uniforms glimmered faintly under the snow's reflection, halted their tasks, acknowledging his presence with subtle but unmistakable deference. My heart pounded. I couldn't understand what I was seeing. How could a frail, shivering old man command such respect without a word, without a gesture? Every instinct screamed that this was no ordinary life, no ordinary figure. I noticed tiny details I would have missed in any other context. A silver medallion glinting beneath his coat, intricate embroidery on the cuffs of his sleeves, a ring on his finger that caught the lamplight just so. The subtle authority in his posture, the way his gaze scanned the street with calm assurance, hinted at centuries of experience. Even in apparent vulnerability, he carried the presence of someone who had seen and commanded worlds far beyond my understanding. My mind raced with questions I wasn't sure I was ready to ask. The townspeople's reactions added fuel to my imagination. A baker lowered his loaf in silent respect. A group of children stopped mid-play, eyes wide, sensing some invisible gravity in the man's presence. Even the wind seemed to behave differently around him, pausing as though uncertain of how to move. I wondered, was this stranger, ruler, a mystical figure? A man whose power was cloaked beneath humility and time-worn skin? Each thought pulled me further into a labyrinth of fascination and dread. As I trailed him, I saw faint lights flicker along the edges of the streets, soft glows that seemed to move in rhythm with his steps. Candles in the windows flickered unusually, almost as though acknowledging his presence. My pulse quickened. I couldn't explain it rationally, yet something told me these lights were a signal, subtle but deliberate, leading me closer to understanding. My curiosity burned brighter than the cold around me, even as tension wrapped tight around my chest. I found myself straining to observe everything, every gesture of the old man, every whispered reaction of the townspeople, every shadow stretching unnaturally along the cobblestones. There was a ceremonial air about him, an aura I couldn't fully grasp, and yet it called to me irresistibly. Each step felt like walking along the edge of revelation. My mind flickered between skepticism and awe. Was this truly destiny, or merely my imagination heightened by the cold and the fire of the night before? Yet the subtle cues, the glances of others, the obedience in their movements, the flicker of hidden lights, told a story my heart already recognized. I paused at the edge of an alley, hiding in shadows, yet unable to tear my eyes away. The old man's movements were deliberate, elegant, commanding, yet without arrogance. His head tilted slightly, noticing something I couldn't yet see, and my breath caught. The smallest shift in his stance carried meaning, and I realized I was witnessing not just a man, but the echoes of authority, legacy, and history moving through the ordinary streets of this quiet town. I could feel the invisible threads pulling me closer to a truth I had not anticipated. I wanted to approach him again, offer another word, another gesture, but some part of me, ancient, cautious, instinctive, told me to wait, to watch, to absorb. The significance of this night wasn't meant to be rushed. I could feel it in the crisp air, in the eyes of the townspeople, in the subtle rhythm of the lights and shadows. Every detail hinted at stories hidden beneath the surface, whispers of power cloaked in humility, waiting for the right observer to notice. And somehow, the world had chosen me to be that observer. My gaze returned to the old man, whose eyes now flickered toward the distance, scanning as though expecting someone, or something. My pulse quickened. I strained to see beyond the line of sight, through shadows and snow, but the streets appeared empty. Yet the way he stood, poised and patient, hinted at arrivals unseen, signals unnoticed by everyone but him. My curiosity swelled into a mixture of anticipation and fear. This night was becoming something I could not have imagined, and the air seemed thick with secrets ready to unfold. Faint lights flickered unusually along the street, guiding my gaze back to him. The old man's eyes held something unspoken, a silent invitation, or perhaps a warning. My heart raced as I sensed an unseen presence approaching, something that even the townspeople did not notice. I realized then that the stranger before me was far more than a man. He was a harbinger of truths I was not yet ready to understand. And in that moment, I knew the night was about to reveal secrets that would shatter everything I thought I knew. Every detail screamed power, though he wore only humble clothes, a ruler disguised in plain sight. The old man moved with a deliberate grace that seemed almost ceremonial, each step measured, precise, as though the ground itself acknowledged his presence. My eyes traced the subtleties I had missed before. Gloves with intricate embroidery that caught the lamplight like liquid gold, patterns on his coat cuffs resembling crowns, and shoes polished to a reflective shine despite the frozen streets. It was as if each small object whispered stories of wealth, influence, and centuries of authority, carefully hidden beneath the guise of simplicity. I followed him, careful not to betray my growing fascination. Every interaction with the townspeople heightened the mystery. Merchants lowered their heads as he passed, children froze mid-step, and even the guards stationed along the streets straightened their posture, acknowledging him without a word. Each subtle bow, each whispered greeting, carried weight. I could sense a silent language in their movements, a code I was only beginning to decipher. Every glance toward the old man, every hesitation, seemed to amplify his presence, like invisible currents swirling around him. The realization hit me hard. The stranger I had helped was no ordinary elder. As we continued down the snow-dusted street, his voice broke the silence, low and deliberate. "Kindness is always noticed, though not always understood," he said. There was no boast in his tone, only a quiet gravity, a weight that made the air feel denser, as though even the wind was listening. My mind raced. These words, simple yet layered, hinted at a life lived in command, in observation, in responsibility far beyond my comprehension. My curiosity, already aflame, now burned with intensity. Who was he? What history did these streets, these people, know that I did not? I glanced again at the townspeople. A shopkeeper lowered his signpost to avoid casting a shadow across the old man. A mother instinctively shielded her child, yet her eyes gleamed with awe and subtle fear. In every reaction, I saw hints of ritual, respect, and unspoken obedience. Even the distant ceremonial banners swayed gently, catching the lamplight, signaling a presence too important to ignore. My pulse quickened. Every clue seemed deliberate, a breadcrumb trail pointing to a hidden world of authority. The old man paused at the corner, his gaze sweeping the quiet square. I noticed the delicate embroidery along his coat, sleeves, symbols resembling tiny crowns, subtly designed, unnoticed by anyone but the keenest observer. His gloves, finely stitched and patterned, glinted faintly in the firelight. Every element of his appearance had been carefully curated to signal significance while maintaining the illusion of humility. I felt a shiver run through me. How could a man carry such weight in invisibility, influencing all around him, yet remain unnoticed by casual eyes? A soft murmur arose from the crowd as a ceremonial procession emerged from a distant alley. Torchbearers, their flames dancing against the darkened streets, carried banners embroidered with regal emblems. The townspeople instinctively knelt or bowed, their attention wholly absorbed by the old man, whose presence seemed to anchor the ritual. My chest tightened. I had expected grandeur in palaces, in halls of kings, but here, on a quiet, frozen night, power had taken a humble form, wrapped in tattered clothes and a calm, unassuming demeanor. My mind reeled at the juxtaposition, an ordinary exterior concealing extraordinary authority. I inched closer, heart hammering, desperate to catch more clues, yet aware of the invisible weight pressing on every action. Every gesture of the old man, how he adjusted his gloves, shifted his stance, allowed a faint smile to touch his lips, radiated quiet command. It was power without arrogance, influence without force. I realized then that authority could be subtle, woven into the smallest of actions, and that the man before me had mastered it. The realization was exhilarating and terrifying in equal measure. A child stumbled in the crowd, and the old man's eyes briefly softened. There was kindness in him, but not weakness. Every motion, every glance, every word carried intent, revealing layers of history, experience, and control. The townspeople moved almost instinctively around him, creating a choreography of reverence I had never witnessed before. And yet, the old man remained serene, as though he alone understood the rhythm of the unseen forces at play. I felt like an intruder into a world of power far older and more deliberate than I could imagine. My curiosity overwhelmed me. I wanted to ask questions, to demand answers, to know the secrets hidden behind his calm, piercing gaze. But the words wouldn't form. I realized the truth. I was standing at the edge of something monumental, something that transcended ordinary comprehension. The man before me was not simply a figure of respect. He was the anchor of authority itself, a ruler disguised among the ordinary, and I had been chosen, whether by fate or chance, to witness this revelation. A procession of torch-bearers passed by, their banners casting golden light on the snow. The old man's gaze shifted toward an alley, unflinching, expectant, as if awaiting a hidden arrival. My chest tightened. This night held secrets far beyond my understanding. I realized then that his authority was not merely symbolic, but absolute, woven into every whisper, every bow, every flicker of candlelight. And in that instant, I knew that the next revelation would change everything I believed about the world, about him, and about my own destiny. A glimpse of grandeur in the distance made my heart stutter. Could someone so ordinary hold such extraordinary power? The snow-crusted lane stretched ahead, lined with leafless trees whose branches shimmered with frost, catching the flickering torches like threads of silver. Every step toward the old man was a mixture of trepidation and fascination. My eyes followed his deliberate pace, noting subtle signs I had missed before. Golden emblems engraved on stone pillars, delicate patterns in the ironwork of nearby gates, and the faint glint of guards hidden in the shadows, standing as silent sentinels. My chest tightened with every realization. The man I had thought a simple wanderer might wield authority far beyond imagination. He gestured toward a narrow garden path, snow crunching under our feet. "Some truths are best approached quietly," he said, voice calm, deliberate, carrying weight without arrogance. There was a certainty in his tone that unsettled me, an invisible gravity pulling me forward. I tried to steady my breathing, to make sense of the incongruence, humility in demeanor, but command in every motion. His eyes glimmered in the torchlight, reflecting centuries of experience, knowledge, and power I could only begin to fathom. As we walked, my gaze wandered to the surroundings. Tiny golden emblems adorned gates, railings, and stone walls, each one perfectly crafted, catching the light and reflecting histories of authority. Even the simplest details, a carved lion's paw on a stone bench, an intricate floral motif along the iron fence, hinted at careful design and intention, symbols of lineage and prestige hidden in plain sight. My pulse quickened. This was no ordinary residence, no casual dwelling. It was a stage upon which power and legacy had been carefully choreographed. The protagonist noticed subtle guards posted at irregular intervals. Their presence was understated but deliberate, an almost invisible layer of protection, suggesting the old man was accustomed to vigilance, respect, and reverence. Yet he moved past them with ease, an unspoken understanding passing between him and the silent figures. Acknowledgement, recognition, deference. I felt a chill, not from the cold, but from the realization that I was witnessing a world hidden beneath ordinary appearances, a world in which this man held sway. Golden gates emerged at the end of the lane, towering and ornate, encrusted with jewels that glimmered in the night. I froze for a moment, my breath forming clouds that mingled with the mist. How could someone who appeared frail, shivering only moments ago, command access to such grandeur? My mind raced, trying to reconcile the humble stranger with the symbols of immense authority now before me. And yet there was no arrogance in him, only quiet confidence, tempered by restraint. The juxtaposition was almost impossible to comprehend. He turned to me, a faint, enigmatic smile curling at the corners of his lips. "Not everything's as it seems," he said softly. His words were both reassurance and warning, simple, yet loaded with significance. I searched his expression, seeking clarity, but found only calm, timeless patience. My heartbeat thundered in my chest. The air seemed to vibrate with anticipation, as though the very night itself held its breath, awaiting the moment when I would finally perceive the full truth. Every step toward the gates felt like crossing a threshold into another world. The snow beneath our feet gleamed like scattered diamonds in the torchlight, and the wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the scent of ancient wood, polished stone, and faint traces of incense. The atmosphere was thick with majesty and secrecy. I could sense eyes upon us, hidden yet present, aware of the man I walked beside, acknowledging the invisible hierarchy that defined this place. Subtle details continued to reveal themselves. The guard's posture, the way the lanterns flickered in unison, the careful symmetry of the gardens. Each element was deliberate, as though choreographed to convey authority, yet blended seamlessly with the serene beauty of the night. I realized with awe that I was walking through a realm of power hidden behind modest facades, a place where influence and command were signaled not through bluster, but through the quiet orchestration of detail. The old man paused briefly, allowing me to take in the gates and the faint silhouette of a distant palace or ornate residence. My breath caught. The grandeur was breathtaking. Soaring spires, gilded balconies, and windows glowing with a soft, welcoming light. Yet it was distant, almost like a mirage emerging from the snow, a hint at the scale of influence this man commanded. My mind raced with possibilities. The ruler of the land, a guardian of ancient lineage, a secret power hidden from ordinary eyes. I followed his gaze toward the palace, noticing the delicate balance of opulence and subtlety. The building exuded authority without intimidation, power without aggression. I felt small, insignificant, yet honored to witness a fragment of this hidden world. My emotions surged: awe, disbelief, curiosity, and a deep, inexplicable connection to the man guiding me. Every detail, every shadow, every golden glint in the torchlight seemed to signal a story I was only beginning to uncover. The golden gates loomed before us, and the distant palace shimmered under the faint moonlight, its spires glowing like firelight frozen in time. The old man's eyes met mine, calm, yet inscrutable, as if silently asking if I was ready to see the truth. My pulse raced. The magnitude of his hidden power pressed upon me. In that instant, I knew. This night would shatter my understanding of the ordinary forever, and the revelation waiting behind those gates would alter everything I thought I knew about the world, the man, and my own destiny. The closer I came to the truth, the more fragile my courage felt. Every heartbeat a drum of fear and fascination. The snowy lane stretched ahead, glimmering under the flickering torches, shadows stretching long across the icy cobblestones. Each step seemed to echo, carrying my thoughts like whispers in the night. I followed the old man, torn between the instinct to uncover the mystery and the instinct to respect the gravity of what I was witnessing. Every instinct screamed. This was no ordinary encounter. Every gesture, every glance, every subtle flicker of light hinted at secrets older and grander than I could imagine. I watched him carefully as he moved through the path, his gait calm, yet deliberate. The snow crunched softly beneath his feet, a rhythmic accompaniment to my racing thoughts. Despite the icy wind that stung my cheeks, there was an almost magnetic warmth in his presence, a pull that demanded attention, demanded respect, and demanded silence. I noticed ceremonial objects placed along the way, a polished staff leaning against a stone pillar, delicate banners embroidered with golden threads, faint symbols carved into benches and gateways. Each object radiated history, authority, and quiet reverence. The villagers gathered in the distance seemed to sense his passage. Whispers floated in the cold air, heads bowed, eyes flicking toward him with deference I hadn't expected. Some averted their gaze entirely, others followed with cautious curiosity. Even from afar, I felt the tension in their posture, the unspoken acknowledgement of his importance. Every detail painted the picture. The man was not just someone who deserved respect. He commanded it silently, naturally, without overt displays. The contrast between his frail appearance and the power radiating from him was staggering, leaving me in awe and fear at once. As we approached a high, ornate gate, the old man paused. For a moment, he seemed to vanish behind the structure, stepping into shadows where the torchlight barely reached. My heart skipped. Should I follow? Should I wait? The urge to know, to peek behind the veil of mystery, warred with a cautious respect for the unknown. My hands clenched into fists, gripping the edges of my coat for warmth, yet it was not the cold that made my fingers tremble. It was the anticipation of discovery, the fear of what power and secrets lay just out of sight. Every step I had taken that night seemed to have led to this precise moment. I thought of the coat I had offered, the man's faint smile, the way he moved with quiet authority. Could this have been a test? A moment meant to gauge my character, my courage, my readiness to witness what few had seen. The thought sent a shiver down my spine, mingling with the icy wind that swept across the lane. I felt fragile, yet electrified, every nerve alive with tension. My eyes darted to the subtle insignia on the gates, intricate carvings, polished metal filigree, and tiny hints of gold catching the torchlight. Even the smallest details were deliberate, signaling status, lineage, and power. I wondered how much of this the villagers understood, and how much remained hidden, known only to those who had been trained to recognize its meaning. It was a silent language of authority, a narrative of legacy written in symbols and gestures rather than spoken aloud. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the old man. He re-emerged from behind the gate, stepping lightly onto the path that led deeper into the hidden garden beyond. Each motion was calm and purposeful, yet there was a tension in the air I could not ignore. A subtle shift in the wind, the way the torches flickered, the faintest echo of footsteps that weren't mine. It was as if the world itself had paused, holding its breath as we crossed into a realm of hidden significance. Internal reflection consumed me. What responsibility came with discovering this hidden power? If he was indeed the ruler of this land, or someone of monumental authority, what would it mean for me to witness it? Could I remain a passive observer, or was I now entwined in events far larger than my own understanding? The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying. Every instinct warned me to tread carefully, yet every fiber of my being urged me forward, toward the truth that had been cloaked for so long. The old man paused again, turning slightly to glance over his shoulder. His eyes met mine for a heartbeat, calm, knowing, yet unreadable. I felt the pull of an unspoken question. Were my intentions honorable? Was I ready to confront what lay ahead? My heart raced violently, pounding in time with the flickering flames of the torches that lined the path. In that instant, every fear, every wonder, every unasked question coalesced into a single point of tension. The truth was just ahead, shimmering behind the hidden gate, and my soul knew that once revealed, nothing would ever be the same. The old man disappeared behind the ornate gate once more, his silhouette vanishing into shadow. My chest tightened, breath frozen in the icy air, as the reality of his hidden authority pressed upon me. The ceremonial symbols, the villagers' reverence, the faint glint of gold, all converged into a single, undeniable truth. And I knew, with a thrill and a terror intertwined, that the moment I stepped closer, everything I had believed about this ordinary knight, this frail man, and myself, would be irrevocably transformed. And then I saw it. The unmistakable mark of authority, the throne, the guards, the revelation that shattered my perception. The snow-dusted path opened into a courtyard that glowed under the golden lanterns, each flame flickering like it held a secret. My breath caught as the old man's movements shifted subtly. He straightened, his frailty replaced by an undeniable presence of command. The robes he now wore shimmered in the torchlight, embroidered with intricate patterns of gold thread, the weight of centuries reflected in every fold. I had given him a coat, thinking it a small act of kindness, but the world had just tilted, revealing truths I wasn't prepared to comprehend. The courtyard was lined with guards standing in perfect formation, their polished spears gleaming, the crests on their uniforms hinting at lineage and history. Servants moved silently, attending to details I had previously ignored, but now seemed loaded with importance. Every gesture, every step, every glance radiated purpose, as if the very stones beneath my feet recognized the authority embodied in the man before me. My eyes widened as I took in the palace beyond. Its ornate gates, golden emblems, and soaring pillars whispered of legacy, power, and stories of generations hidden from plain sight. He approached slowly, each step deliberate, carrying the weight of history and respect. His gaze met mine, calm, yet penetrating, and I felt the gentle force of someone who had observed the world for decades, yet chosen this moment to reveal himself. My heart raced. The coat I had draped over his shoulders, the warmth I had offered in passing, now felt like a key that unlocked a secret universe. "Kindness," he began softly, his voice carrying across the courtyard without effort, "reveals more than we know. That coat, your gesture did not go unnoticed." Each word seemed measured, yet infused with a depth that made my chest tighten. I struggled to find words. Awe, fear, and astonishment collided, leaving me mute. How could the frail figure I had seen on the roadside transform into the embodiment of power, elegance, and authority before my eyes? Every doubt, every ordinary assumption evaporated in an instant, replaced by a profound humility and reverence I hadn't known I could feel. The guards shifted slightly, as though acknowledging a silent command. The courtyard, once merely a setting, now felt like a stage orchestrated to reveal destiny. The old man, now regal, commanding, yet still intimate in presence, gestured toward a raised dais. A throne, grand and imposing, stood beneath a canopy embroidered with the emblem of the land. I staggered slightly, unable to reconcile the kind stranger I had helped with the ruler of this domain, the guardian of power, whose life had been hidden in plain sight. Dialogue deepened the revelation. "I have watched, for many nights, how the world interacts with its people," he said, voice both gentle and firm. "Kindness, empathy, courage. These are qualities not measured by rank or riches, but by the heart. Your choice to offer warmth revealed a truth about yourself, a truth that could not be ignored." My pulse thundered. Every instinct screamed that this moment, this revelation, was sacred and transformative. The simple coat, an act, I thought, trivial, had bridged the ordinary and the extraordinary, the human and the regal, connecting two worlds that had previously seemed separate. Subtle hints of his vigilance became apparent. The flicker of his eyes, the slight nod toward a guard, the way the ceremonial robes concealed hidden messages and insignia. I realized, with awe and fear, that he had observed the kindness of strangers for longer than I could imagine, weighing their hearts and intentions silently. That the ruler, the guardian of lands and legacies, had chosen to reveal himself to me was a privilege I could scarcely believe. Emotional impact surged within me. Awe at the grandeur, humility at my ignorance, astonishment at the power of small actions. My knees felt weak as I followed him, each step carrying the weight of history, responsibility, and destiny. The coat, once a simple gesture of warmth, now felt like a bridge across worlds, a symbol of my entry into something far larger than myself, something sacred, deliberate, and transformative. Suspense lingered. Though revelation had arrived, hints of future responsibility whispered through the courtyard. His eyes held promise, challenge, and expectation. "This night," he said softly, "is not merely about what has been done, but about what may yet come. Choices are made in moments, yet their impact echoes across lifetimes." I realized with a shiver that I was standing at the threshold of opportunity, destiny, and challenge. A moment where every decision I would make next could shape the path ahead in ways I could not yet imagine. The grandeur, the guards, the throne, the robes, the subtle power of presence, all were pieces of a revelation that demanded respect and reflection. And yet, beneath it all, he remained approachable, humane, and intimate in his connection to me. The tension between ordinary kindness and extraordinary authority settled in my chest like a live wire, thrilling, terrifying, and intoxicating all at once. He extended a hand toward me, a gesture of inclusion, guidance, and expectation. My mind raced. What responsibilities would this revelation demand? What doors had this simple act of kindness unlocked? The snow sparkled under the lanterns, the guard's eyes followed silently, and I felt the weight of destiny pressing down. And in that instant, I understood. This night, the coat, the stranger, and the revelation were only the beginning of a journey that would forever change the course of my life. Everything I had done, every small kindness, suddenly felt monumental as the truth unfolded before my eyes. The cold night, the snow-laden streets, and the fleeting moment of offering a coat now seemed like fragments of a story, written long before I had stepped onto the icy path. My pulse raced, heart hammering, as the old man, no longer frail, no longer a mere stranger, revealed the full expanse of his identity. He stood beneath the warm glow of lanterns, regal robes cascading in golden folds, insignias glinting with centuries of legacy, his presence commanding reverence, yet tempered with an unexpected warmth. The courtyard shimmered under the torchlight, every shadow stretched like a living tapestry. Guards lined the perimeter with unwavering posture, their eyes fixed not just on duty, but in acknowledgement of the ruler's presence. Servants moved quietly, arranging ceremonial objects that glimmered with craftsmanship and history. The palace behind him rose majestically, its gates decorated with intricate gold patterns, banners fluttering softly in the winter breeze. Each detail whispered tales of lineage, wisdom, and power, yet also hinted at humility and vigilance that could only belong to a ruler who understood the fragility of life. I felt my knees weaken, a mixture of awe, disbelief, and profound humility crashing over me. The coat I had draped over his shoulders, a simple act of empathy, had become the thread that wove me into a tapestry of destiny far beyond my comprehension. Every breath I took felt charged with energy, the kind that could shape lives, alter futures, and expose the hidden truths of the world. My mind raced. How could a single gesture of warmth hold the key to revelation? How had I stumbled into a narrative where kindness itself became a force of destiny? He approached me, each step deliberate, resonant with authority, yet gentle enough to invite trust. His gaze held mine, calm and penetrating, a look that seemed to measure the entirety of my heart, my intentions, my courage. "You have done more than offer a coat," he said softly, his voice echoing across the courtyard, like a melody carrying centuries of wisdom. "You have recognized the value of empathy, and that recognition cannot go unnoticed. Every act of kindness ripples outward, shaping destinies in ways unseen." I swallowed hard, struggling to find words. My mind reeled between incredulity and inspiration, the weight of his presence pressing against my chest. I had encountered power before, stories, tales, distant grandeur, but never had I stood before it, tangible and intimate, feeling both the gravity and the grace of authority in a human form. The golden insignias on his robes, subtle patterns hinting at rulership and wisdom, seemed alive, shimmering with an inner glow that mirrored the fire of his character. As I gazed at him, a slow realization settled in. The ruler had been observing me, my choices, my heart, silently assessing the character that would either rise to meet responsibility or falter under revelation. Each detail now made sense: the fleeting glance, the enigmatic smile, the deliberate actions in the courtyard. It was a test, a subtle unveiling, and I had passed without knowing I was being measured. He gestured toward the palace gates, inviting me to walk beside him. The cold air carried scents of pine, warmed by the lanterns, mingling with the faint aroma of freshly polished wood and delicate incense from within the halls. Each step resonated, a rhythm of destiny and chance intertwining. I followed, heart racing, every sense alert, noticing the subtle nods of respect from guards and attendants. This was no ordinary night. It was a turning point, a threshold I had never imagined I would cross. Dialogue continued, soft yet commanding. "Remember this," he said, eyes locking with mine. "The small choices you make, the compassion you offer, the courage to act without expectation. These are the forces that shape kingdoms, influence hearts, and guide futures. Never underestimate the power of simple deeds." His words struck deep, a revelation as intimate as it was monumental. I felt both humbled and inspired, aware that my ordinary life had intersected with extraordinary responsibility, that the ripples of a single moment could span worlds. Suspense lingered like the delicate mist over the courtyard. Though the truth of his identity was now revealed, hints of further events, tasks, or responsibilities hovered in the air, invisible threads connecting me to a journey only beginning. My mind spun with questions, possibilities, and the thrilling fear of stepping into a world where every act carried consequence, yet also the chance to shape history in subtle, profound ways. The old man extended his hand once more, not in command, but in invitation, a gesture linking trust, guidance, and the silent promise of mentorship. I reached out, and as our hands met, I felt the surge of connection between ordinary kindness and extraordinary legacy. The snow sparkled under the lantern light, and in that instant, I understood that the journey was far from over. This night, this coat, this revelation, all were preludes to something greater, a story of destiny, empathy, and the unseen power of compassion. The old man's eyes twinkled, carrying secrets and promises yet unspoken. The palace behind him whispered of future challenges, of responsibilities that would test my courage, and of opportunities to shape the world in ways I had never imagined. My heart raced. The cold night no longer mattered. The journey was beginning, and I had been chosen, not by fate alone, but by the power of a single act of kindness that would echo through everything I was yet to experience. I walked home under the stars, each step crunching softly on the frost-covered streets, my mind alive with the weight of what I had witnessed. The night had been ordinary at first. A frozen street, a shivering old man, a coat offered in kindness, and yet it had revealed a world I had never imagined. Every breath of icy air felt sharp and electric, carrying not just the cold, but the echoes of destiny and revelation. My heart thudded with awe, excitement, and a quiet, humbling fear, as though the universe itself had leaned closer to witness the moment when ordinary compassion met extraordinary truth. The townspeople seemed to carry a new energy tonight. From shadowed doorways and, snow-dusted porches, I glimpsed expressions that mixed curiosity with quiet reverence. Conversations hushed as I passed, subtle nods of acknowledgement that hinted they had felt the shift, had sensed the hidden power in the streets around us. The ordinary village, which had once felt mundane and routine, now seemed layered with unseen significance. Every lamplit alley, every frost-glittering rooftop, spoke of hidden connections, of quiet deeds rippling outward to shape events far larger than themselves. As I retraced my steps along familiar paths, my mind replayed every detail of the encounter. The old man's piercing gaze, calm yet commanding, the soft shimmer of his ceremonial insignias, the way he accepted the coat with a faint smile that seemed to measure not the generosity of the gesture alone, but the intent behind it. His words echoed in my mind, a quiet mantra. Every act of kindness ripples into destiny. Every choice matters. The thought unsettled and inspired me in equal measure. I had performed a simple act, but it had unveiled a truth beyond my comprehension, a reminder that ordinary lives can brush against greatness in ways unseen. Internal reflection deepened as I realized that my perspective on the world had shifted irrevocably. Humility, empathy, courage, qualities I had always thought of as small, private, almost inconsequential, now glowed with new significance. They connected people to each other, to the flow of fate, and even to rulers hidden behind ordinary facades. I pictured the old man walking back toward his palace, regal yet unassuming, knowing that every quiet choice I made tonight would influence the rhythm of life around me, just as he had subtly influenced mine. Dialogue from the night replayed in my memory, like whispers carried on the winter wind. You have recognized the value of empathy, and that recognition cannot go unnoticed. Each word was weighted with centuries of wisdom, echoing through my thoughts. I understood that these were not mere platitudes. They were lessons meant to linger, to shape behavior, to remind me that actions, even small ones, carry the power to alter worlds. And yet, there remained a suspenseful hush. What further encounters awaited? The night hinted that this revelation was only a beginning, that destiny had more to teach me, more to test me with. I passed the old bakery, its windows aglow, and for a moment, the warmth inside contrasted sharply with the cold outside. I imagined the townspeople gathered around fires, sensing a subtle change in the air. Perhaps they, too, had noticed the ruler's presence in their midst. Or perhaps it was only my heart attuned to the echoes of hidden authority and kindness. Every flickering lamplight seemed like a witness, every shadow a silent observer of a world quietly rearranging itself around the actions of those willing to act with courage and care. The snowflakes drifted lazily, catching lantern light like tiny stars, falling from the heavens, and I felt suspended between awe and contemplation. My hands tightened in my coat pockets, as though grasping the warmth of insight itself. I thought of the night's progression, from initial shock at the shivering stranger, to curiosity, tension, revelation, and finally, this quiet walk home. The story had unfolded like a delicate tapestry, each thread carefully woven, revealing a portrait of humanity and power intertwined. It was a story of hidden rulers, of ordinary acts shaping extraordinary outcomes, of kindness as both shield and key. Suspense lingered in the quiet streets. The old man's presence, his wisdom, and the coat I had offered were all catalysts for future possibility. What responsibilities awaited me? What choices would now carry greater weight? Even as I returned to the comfort of my own home, a subtle shiver ran through me, not from cold, but from the recognition that life had irrevocably shifted. The night had ended, yet its consequences were only beginning. I paused atop the hill overlooking the village, gazing at the soft glow of lanterns scattered like fireflies across snow-covered rooftops. A hush seemed to blanket the world, a quiet tension that whispered of things unseen. I felt connected to the web of human actions, to kindness, and to unseen authority. A web where every gesture mattered. The memory of the old man's eyes, wise and knowing, stayed with me, guiding my steps, reminding me that the ordinary can brush against the extraordinary at any moment. As I finally stepped through my doorway, closing it gently behind me, I realized life would never be the same. The night had transformed me, instilling humility, courage, and a sense of purpose I had not known I possessed. I understood that ordinary acts of compassion were, in truth, monumental, that they could bridge worlds, touch hearts, and reveal hidden truths. And though the ruler's secret identity had been revealed, the future remained shrouded in possibility, inviting me to live with newfound awareness, to act with intention, and to carry the quiet knowledge that destiny is often shaped by the smallest of gestures. As I hung the coat to dry by the hearth, a faint knock echoed at the door. My pulse quickened, and I wondered, had the night truly ended, or was this the first of many encounters? Somewhere in the shadows, unseen yet present, the ruler's influence lingered, promising that the story was far from over. The world outside remained ordinary to others, yet to me, every moment now carried weight, every choice significance, and every act of kindness a potential ripple in destiny. The coat I offered became more than warmth. It became a bridge between worlds, a thread connecting the ordinary to the extraordinary. That single gesture, performed on a cold, silent night, had unveiled a truth I could scarcely comprehend. As I walked back through the frost-dusted streets, my mind replayed every detail of the encounter: the shivering old man, his piercing gaze, the subtle glimmers of authority hidden beneath his humble exterior. Each breath hung visibly in the crisp night air, a reminder that this night had reshaped my understanding of kindness, power, and destiny. I felt both exhilarated and humbled, aware that life had shifted in ways I could not yet measure. The village, bathed in soft lantern glow, seemed transformed. Snow sparkled under the dim light, each flake catching a tiny reflection of something almost magical, as if the universe itself had acknowledged the events of the night. Doors that had always seemed ordinary now held a quiet significance. I noticed villagers lingering in shadows, their expressions a mix of curiosity, reverence, and subtle recognition. The ordinary streets had become a stage for destiny, their silence amplifying the gravity of what had occurred. My footsteps echoed in the quiet night, each step carrying the weight of wonder and reflection. Every memory of the encounter pressed upon me. The old man's calm authority, his unassuming appearance, and the wisdom in his words had left an indelible mark on my soul. Every act of kindness ripples into destiny, he had said, and I now understood the depth of that simple truth. That night, a fleeting act, offering a coat to a stranger, had revealed the presence of hidden power and revealed a life lived quietly among the ordinary, yet capable of extraordinary influence. The realization stirred a profound mixture of awe, gratitude, and humility. I reached the small bridge overlooking the river that wound through the village. Moonlight shimmered across the water, reflecting my own contemplative face back at me. I felt the quiet pulse of the world, a rhythm shaped by unseen hands, by deeds and choices, by kindness that often went unnoticed. My heart swelled as I realized that the encounter had not only changed my perception of the old man, but had transformed my understanding of myself. I had glimpsed the potential within simple acts, the power to touch lives, and the ripple effect that even a single gesture could create. The words of the ruler lingered in my mind, echoing softly as if the night itself carried them. Compassion is the greatest strength. Small deeds reveal hidden truths, and destiny often listens to the quietest hearts. I pondered the weight of his message, recognizing that it was both a lesson and an invitation to continue acting with integrity, empathy, and courage, knowing that the world would respond in ways unseen, yet deeply significant. The thought inspired a quiet determination, a resolve to live with the awareness that each choice, each action, had meaning far beyond the moment. As I approached my home, the glow from the windows welcomed me, yet I felt a subtle distance from the ordinary life I had once taken for granted. The night had expanded my understanding of connection, humility, and the invisible forces that shape destiny. My hand lingered on the doorknob, reluctant to leave the night's magic behind. The coat, now folded neatly by the hearth, felt heavier with significance, a tangible reminder that one simple act could bridge worlds, alter futures, and reveal truths hidden beneath ordinary appearances. Even as I stepped inside, warmth filling the room, I sensed that the story was not fully complete. The ruler's presence lingered, a subtle yet undeniable influence that hinted at future lessons, encounters, and opportunities to witness or participate in the extraordinary. The night had closed one chapter, but opened countless possibilities, leaving me with a sense of anticipation and reverent curiosity. I understood that the ordinary world I returned to would never feel the same again. Each interaction, each choice, held the potential to uncover hidden layers of meaning, to touch destinies silently awaiting recognition. I hung the coat by the fire, my fingers brushing the fabric with quiet reverence. A faint, almost imperceptible smile crossed my lips as I realized that this night had changed everything. Not just for me, but for the invisible threads connecting all lives. Somewhere, the ruler's gaze lingered, unseen yet palpable, promising that the story was far from over. The night had ended, yet its lessons whispered across the village, and I knew life would never be the same. If this story of kindness, secrets, and destiny moved you, hit the like button and let us know. Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever discovered a hidden truth through a simple act? Subscribe and turn on notifications to join us on more journeys full of emotion, suspense, and inspiration. Stay until the end of every video. Your next adventure begins the moment you do.